Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. And today we're joined here with my good friend, author and historian Robert Lundgren, who is the author of Battleship Victory and The World Wondered. We've left links of both of those books in the description below. He's also the author of several articles which have been published in various places online, such as Combined Fleet and NavWeps. And one of your articles on NavWeps that I found really interesting talks about the duel between Washington and Kirishima.
Of course, that's the naval battle of Guadalcanal, and Kirishima. When I was growing up, the standard, what you read was Washington hit her 9 times and she had to be scuttled. I then found Japanese documents which said that she was hit between 20 and 23 times, which was totally new. And Bob Ballard had found the wreck, I believe it was 1992. And so I contacted Dr. Ballard. To my amazement, he wrote back. And he told me that the film of the Kirishima was at the Washington Navy Yard.
Okay,
well, I only live an hour away from the Washington Navy Yard. So I was like, I'm there. So I went down and I met Charles Haberlein, who was also part of that expedition. Yes. I got to see the original 1992 film, and I showed Charles where the Japanese officer, Lieutenant Ikeda, mapped out where the Kirishima had been hit, and was hoping to just say, yes, his testimony is accurate. Well, Dr. Ballard almost died on that expedition. When he went down in the submarine, his oxygen and the CO2 scrubbers failed, and he had to do an emergency ascent. So there's only 9 minutes of film of the Kirishima. It's very incomplete, but one of the hits, exactly where Lieutenant Ikeda says it was indeed filmed.
It never felt right to me that these two battleships, Washington with very modern fire control and Lee, renowned as a fire control expert, are engaging at knife fighting range. They're what, 2 miles apart?
The Washington was between 8 and 12,000 yards during the 7 minutes that she fired.
Okay, so 4 to 6 miles away. There is no way that during all those broadsides that she only got 9 hits. So hearing from Japanese sources that confirm, oh yeah, it was 2 or 3 times that many, makes way more sense to me.
Well, in 2019, Robert Kraft refilmed the Kirishima, and then the entire stern section was filmed, and even though we can't confirm all 20 to 23 hits, because her bow is missing, I believe we confirmed 14, which is more.
It's more than Lee claimed that he got.
Than Lee claimed. And I can say that the 4 hits into the forward barbettes had to take place because they're the very reason the bow is missing.
So that's the most compelling point of your argument here. I want to talk about that a little bit more and what could have destroyed the barbette in that way.
Every Japanese battleship, cruiser, and even their destroyers had a projectile that the Japanese named as a Type 3 incendiary shell. It uses thermite. The main ingredient of the thermite is magnesium. Now, what happened inside, now Kirishima's purpose was to bombard Henderson Field with these shells.
Right.
That's what she had loaded, and South Dakota was hit with at least 2 of them. And so she was loaded with Type 3 projectiles.
Now, battleship's main guns, you can load the hoists with, on both Kirishima and New Jersey, you can have 5 shells pre-stacked in the hoist so you can fire faster before you have to start pulling more shells in. So it makes sense that going into a battle, you think you're going to do a shore bombardment, you load that shore bombardment projectile. So 2 of her salvos hit South Dakota. That means that at minimum there's still 3 salvos worth of shells in the hoists and however many more are in the magazines.
So when Washington hit the forward barbettes, her armor is only about 9 inches thick, not like the 17 inches that the New Jersey has. And Washington's 2,700-pound shells cut through that like a knife through hot butter.
Oh my God, at a range of 8 miles,
Right.
That's not stopping anything.
Right. And so Washington's 16-inch shells detonate the Type 3s in the hoist. Now, the Type 3s burn at 3,000 degrees Celsius. That's 5,400 degrees Fahrenheit. And a thermite or magazine fire starts to burn inside the barbettes.
Okay.
It burns so hot that American sailors said Hiroshima was glowing red.
And that's something that you read in some of these reports, and it just doesn't make sense. And I can understand why earlier historians, not really understanding this type of chemical reaction, don't have any way to describe that. They just see a fire in front of the barbette or something like that.
And so not only is the thermite heating the steel is now absorbing this heat.
So this 9-inch armor plate
is red hot.
Absorbing so much heat that it is glowing red and visible to an American ship 6 or 8 miles away.
The ship got so hot on the inside that most of Hiroshima's casualties are due to heat exposure. She's literally becoming an oven on the inside. 5,400 degrees Fahrenheit is 50% the surface temperature of the sun.
Holy cow.
Okay, and so the chief engineer runs to the bridge and begs the captain to evacuate the lower compartments. And then they do. They can't walk on her bow. Her bow is so hot, they have to gather on her stern. Okay, now it took about I'd have to go back and look. It was several hours before she actually capsizes and sinks. When she capsizes and sinks, that hot steel is still super, super hot. Whether the thermite is active or not, or completely consumed, the steel will take the seawater and convert it into hydrogen and oxygen gas. So Hiroshima plunged by the stern. The fire is in the forward turrets. The gas rises vertically.
Okay. Hydrogen and oxygen.
So the gas is filling the bow up. But as the gas cools off, it can start to reattach to oxygen at about 1,100 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
And then the hydrogen is going to ignite because the ignition temperature of hydrogen is only 500 degrees.
And the ship is sinking in relatively cold
Right.
seawater.
So as she goes down, she cools off, but that actually is a problem. The gas will ignite. It will be accelerated towards the speed of sound in a fraction of a second. And when it breaks the speed of sound, it detonates and creates a shock wave, just like high explosives. And her bow was literally blown off, and Hiroshima's stern sank to the bottom. And if you actually look at the debris field, you can tell that her anchor chains and everything up here fell across her stern, and that basically she was vertical when she detonated. Okay. And so she was still on the way. So this actually, in timing-wise, because she's actually not that deep, is probably 5 minutes.
Wow.
Okay. And it's because the armor had retained all of that heat. And it literally converts the seawater into hydrogen gas.
The science behind this is absolutely mind-boggling. That it's half the temperature of the sun, that it's boiling the seawater and breaking it down.
It is the same physics, and the reason the Russians sent the 3 men underneath Chernobyl to drain the water tanks, because the melting down nuclear reactor, they were afraid was going to convert all that water into hydrogen gas, and then any spark would result in an explosion which would destroy the other 3 reactors. Now the Russians were successful at avoiding that because they were able to drain the water tanks. At Fukushima, the nuclear power plant that melted down due to the tidal wave, they've had 3 hydrogen gas explosions. And some of those explosions have destroyed surrounding buildings. And so this is very, very real. The only thing that you need is heat. Now, what surprised me is that Chernobyl only got to 1,600 degrees Celsius. The thermite burns at 3,000 degrees Celsius, almost twice as hot.
That is mind-boggling. It's one thing to think about, oh yeah, nuclear reactions or the surface of the sun, but just like the contents of a normal battleship projectile, it's like just a 5-foot tall, what is it, like a 1,400 pound projectile.
But when you stack them in the numbers that these ships stack, all of a sudden you have thousands of pounds of magnesium. And magnesium is basically one of the most, once it's ignited, it doesn't care if it's submerged. It doesn't care. It's one of the, you can't spray water on it to put it out. You cannot spray CO2. It will actually use water and CO2 as fuel. Okay, it becomes an exothermic reaction. And one of the things me and Anthony Tully are looking into is some of the fires on Japanese ships, because they had it all the way down to 5-inch shells. Were some of the Japanese ships burning because this ammunition was cooking off and spreading magnesium, and then you can't put the fire out?
Now that is wild that you have to look at the loss of every ship armed with 5-inch guns, 8-inch guns, 14-inch guns, 16-inch guns, 18-inch guns, and reevaluate, was this reaction happening on them too?
It happened on the Mogami. A 6-inch shell from Columbia penetrated turret 3. The 8-inch Type 3s ignited inside the barbette. The Japanese were forced to flood the magazines for turret 3. Then they flooded the magazines for turret 2. They tried to flood the magazines for turret 1, but the heat had already welded the valves shut.
Because the water isn't putting out the fire, flooding the magazines doesn't help in this case.
Well, the magazines will protect the
powder
from going off. But one shell effectively took out the entire main armament of the cruiser. In Kiroshima's case, okay, her forward batteries were taken out. But the ship, had she survived, would have been totally ruined. Had she made port, she would have been scrapped.
Oh yeah.
She was totally gutted. As a matter of fact, I believe the Japanese described the forward turrets as smash. Now look at that turret. It was melting inside the barbette, because inside the barbette had reached temperatures of the sun. And it was literally caving in to the giant hole, because you know the barbette goes all the way to the bottom of the ship. This is what was happening to Kirishima. Okay? And they couldn't walk on her bow because her decks were so hot. So it is mind-boggling.
I think it's also worth pointing out that the Japanese are the only country that are using anything similar to this projectile. The United States Navy, we've got high-capacity shells, regular plastic explosive burster charge. We've got armor-piercing shells, regular plastic explosive bursting charges. Really the closest we get, there might be some magnesium flares for the 5-inch guns, but the white phosphorus rounds for the 5-inch guns are probably the closest American analog to this.
No other Navy used thermite, and certainly no other Navy scaled them up to the battleship caliber projectiles. One of the things I think me and Anthony Tully are going to look at, Mogami was very interesting because she said both her 8-inch Type 3s and her 5-inch Type 3s ignited. When Columbia set off the 8-inch, when Mississippi hit her, the 5-inch were also set off, and Mogami deliberately says that the 5-inch set off her torpedoes on the starboard side. Some of the fires that Japanese ships burned so badly during the war, we always blame on poor damage control.
Right.
Okay, and I think we need to look at where some of the ammunition, like Soyuza, I may be mispronouncing her name, her torpedoes detonated because of fires that were uncontrolled, or her 5-inch ammunition cooking off, and that spreads magnesium across the deck. And once magnesium is spread into the fire, you can't spray water on it. It will flare it up. This is what South Dakota found. When the radar plot hit,
Right.
they tried to spray CO2 and water on it, and it flared up. And this is one of the indications that I believe that it was a Type 3 that hit radar plot. They talk about pieces of life jacket burning in her report. Well, the tubes are only 1 inch by 3 inch, and
Right.
it looked like the stuffing of a life jacket.
That makes perfect sense.
So when the crew sprayed CO2, the fire didn't go out, it flared up. And this is a process of a magnesium fire. The magnesium actually can use CO2 as fuel. It doesn't smother a magnesium fire. And one of the things I think we need to relook at, it may not be damage control. It may be the fact that the Japanese ships have so much incendiary material on board their ships, they're a fire hazard. They were so focused on attacking the U.S. with these shells, they never really gave it much thought about what would happen to their ships if they were hit with these projectiles on board.
That makes perfect sense to me. It never felt right that Japanese damage control is poor. It doesn't compare to us. We are using kids from the farm and they know how to take apart a tractor, so our damage control is better. That never really made sense to me, but this theory really blows my mind, and it really is the only way you can explain some of the damage that these Japanese ships are taking, and why it looks so different from damage that American ships or German ships or British ships are taking during the war.
Now, me and Anthony Tully also are looking into, did hydrogen gas explosions break up the USS Lexington at Coral Sea?
Okay.
Aviation gas also burns at 3,000 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
And again, if you look at photographs of the Lexington, she was actively burning as she sank. Now the difference is that once she's submerged, the fire goes out. Aviation gas cannot burn underwater. But the hot plates, instead of making steam, as long as they're above 1,200 degrees, will make hydrogen gas.
Okay.
Not steam. And that her explosions that break her up are on a much smaller scale than Hiroshima or Musashi. But we believe they're the catalyst of why the wreck of Lexington is in 3 pieces.
Interesting, and she's armored very similarly to Hiroshima, so that makes perfect sense.
And so even though the American ships did not have Type 3 incendiary shells, it may have occurred if they were burning really, really bad as they went down.
So a lot of the evidence to prove this theory that survives today is on the shipwrecks. What do you guys think is a shipwreck that should be explored next, or maybe it's already been found, but it needs to be explored in more detail to help prove this theory? Let us know in the comments section down below which shipwrecks you want to see gone after in the future. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description for ways you can donate to support the museum. There's also some links in the description to Bob's articles and books, so make sure you check those out. You can also support the museum by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about us and the channel. Thanks for watching.